stainless steel and the Sheffield Cutlery trade. The table knife is a humble object, seldom thought about, yet is present in every house and on every table. Forged from shear or carbon steel until the early 20th century, the only previous development was to offer a better looking knife in EPNS, electroplated nickel silver, from the 1860s. Sheffield had already been the world centre for the cutlery trade for several centuries, and stainless steel would further confirm the city's dominance and reputation. No one deliberately set out to improve the table knife. It was something of a byproduct. Towards the end of the 19th century, many countries with overseas interests were investing in their armies and navies and developing more powerful weapons and propellants. This exposed a weakness in existing gun barrels as the steel degraded too easily. By the early 1900s, metallurgists in Britain, Germany, France and the United States were experimenting with iron and steel to develop new alloys and investigate their properties to minimize corrosion. But one man in Sheffield was ahead of them: Harry Brearley. Harry Brearley was born in Sheffield in 1871, the son of a steel melter. He left school at the age of 12 and got a job as a labourer in one of Sheffield's steelworks, later transferring to the post of general assistant in the company's chemical laboratory. For several years, as well as his laboratory work, he studied at home and at formal evening classes in steel production techniques and chemical analysis methods. By the time he was 30, Brearley had earned a reputation as an experienced professional, able to resolve practical, industrial and metallurgical problems. In 1908, two of Sheffield's principal steelmaking companies agreed to jointly finance a common research laboratory, Brown-Firth Laboratories, and Harry Brearley was asked to lead the project. In 1912, he was given a task by a rifle manufacturer to create an erosion-resistant steel, not corrosion-resistant. He did this by developing steel alloys containing chromium, making several variations of alloys ranging from 6% to 15% chromium with different measures of carbon. On the 13th of August 1913, Brearley created a steel with 12.8% chromium and 0.24% carbon, which is thought to be the first ever stainless steel. It is said that he etched his steels with nitric acid to examine them under a microscope and analyze their potential resistance to erosion. He found that his new steel resisted these chemical attacks, and so he tested the sample with other agents, including lemon juice and vinegar, which would quickly stain table knives. Brearley was astounded to find that this alloy was highly resistant and immediately recognized its potential for the cutlery industry. Firths engaged a few cutlers to make knives, but were not impressed with the results. The metal was difficult to work and would not take an edge. So Brearley worked with local cutler R.F. Moseley, and together they were able to develop an effective way to work with this new steel. Brearley was going to call his steel rustless, but Ernie Stewart, cutlery manager at Moseley's Portland Works, called it stainless after testing the material with vinegar, and the name stuck. But the onset of the First World War in 1914 meant that only a limited number of stainless steel knives could be produced, as the new steel was reserved for aero engines. It is around this time that Brearley formed the Amalgams Company, which after 1918 was able to further develop this new cutlery. Firths did not entirely lose out, as they were the sole suppliers of high chromium steel to cutlers for many years. Cutlers had to mark their knives with the Firth stainless brand if using their steel. Some earlier knives were marked Firth Brearley stainless. Stainless steel arrived at an appropriate time. Carbon steel cutlery stained very easily after contact with animal fats and food acids, and the taste of the food would transfer. It also rusted if not properly dried. To keep such cutlery clean, it was rubbed on a knife board after each use. This was a slim wooden board covered with a fine abrasive sheet. Large households might have had a knife cleaning and polishing machine. The action of rubbing the blade clean also kept the blade sharp. Many people were not aware of this. After the First World War, domestic help became less available as women had more choices in the job market. So a new knife that required no maintenance was seen as labour-saving, modern and hygienic. Success was immediate, and all cutlers turned to this new material in the 1920s. This was a massive boost to Sheffield knife production, potentially replacing the entire stock of table knives throughout the world over the next 20 years, but not to employment, as the numbers in the cutlery trade remained around 10,000 during the interwar period. This was because stainless steel knives could only be made by machine processes, rather than the traditional hand forging, and the most successful firms had re-equipped to take advantage of mass production. Other firms lost out to foreign competition, and even from within the city. Successful firms such as Viners, Sippel and Richards were modern German businesses which relocated to Sheffield in this period. In the home environment, the only downside to stainless was that as the knives were simply washed and dried, they soon lost their edge. They could be easily sharpened with a steel and be just as sharp as the old knives. Think of modern scalpels and razor blades. But not before Sheffielders had joked that Brearley had invented the blunt knife. In fact, stainless covers a family of alloys which have different properties. For example, super sharp edges or heat resisting. Similar new technology issues arose with stainless bread knives and carving knives. Bread knives were improved by the development of the serrated edge blade, so that the knife acted as a saw. The bread knife serrations were formed by a circular cutter which ground blocks of teeth along the blade. People were generally more used to sharpening a carving knife with a steel, but one improvement to the stainless blade was the Granton knife, patented in 1928. The blade edge is formed by a series of alternating scallops which give a very fine but strong cutting edge to the carver. It is still made in Sheffield today. Forks and spoons known as flatware needed a softer alloy of stainless steel, as they were formed by stamping in dies rather than by forging. This was developed in 1923 by Dr. Hadfield of Firth Brown. For flatware, 0.1% carbon is used, which gives a toughness, but with a reduction in hardness. This steel was known as Staybri and is classified as 18/8, 18% chromium, 8% nickel and 0.1% carbon. It will not take a cutting edge, but it can be easily formed to make spoon bowls and fork tines, which could not be done with cutlery grade stainless. A further option for all types of cutlery was glazing, an additional polishing process which gave a permanent mirror finish to the surface. With the resurgence of the Sheffield cutlery trade in the 1920s, many cutlers were keen to capture a slice of this new market. One way to do this was to give their own stainless knives a marketing edge with aspirational branding. Here are just a few of the brands that cutlers marked on their blades to promote this new image. One of the better known is Rust No Stain by Robert Mosley. I think you will agree, some were more inventive than others. As well as promoting hygiene and modern living, cutlers were quick to spot new lines to produce which were never available in carbon steel. You could now buy quite exotic items such as grapefruit knives, tomato slicers, lemon knives and orange peelers. This new resurgence for the cutlery trade was equally matched by the makers of surgical instruments, who, again, would seek to resupply existing customers. Here, though, the benefits of this new material were extensive and life-saving right across the world. Not a bad legacy for a Sheffield man who just wanted a new table knife.